Great. So let me go back. So welcome once again, and at Premium Consultancy Services, or PCS, we are a fully virtual business management firm that is dedicated to using technology to deliver exceptional accounting, bookkeeping, tax services, as well as training to our clients. Our team is continuously improving by way of training so that we can be ahead of the industry trend, as well as to ensure that we provide top tier support to our clients. And we are trusted by our clients to provide sound advice. And so our niche is small businesses, and we offer our services so that they too can be elevated in their business. And I mean, the main aim for them to be in business is to be successful. And so we assist in that regard. Today's session, however, is designed to equip you as a small business owner the tools you need to streamline your financial processes. Hold for me, I'm seeing more persons are joining the meeting. Let me just admit. Welcome, welcome. So we're going through the introduction. So as I was mentioning, today's session is designed to equip you with the tools you need to streamline your financial processes and to elevate your business. I am Anna K. Wilson. I am the founder and the business consultant, as well as a tax specialist with over 10 years of corporate accounting and tax experience. I have since transitioned to becoming a fully self-employed person. Before, I was working as well as operating my business, but now I have fully transitioned into the company. So what's our focus for today? We will be looking at getting started with QuickBooks. We will be looking at how to get around QuickBooks. You'll receive a 10-minute break just to stretch and to get the juice going, because to sit so long, you may become tired. So we just give you a 10-minute break to just recoup and come again and be ready for the second part, which you will be focused on recording transactions, reporting, and some final tips and takeaway. So let's move right in. If you are having any difficulty, I was sharing earlier that if you're having any audio challenges or any video, you can just hop off, hop on. If when you rejoin and you're still having issues, you can just shoot me a message, and then I will see if it is something from my end. But from all indication, I've ensured that everything goes smoothly, but whatever can go wrong will go wrong. All right, so let's move right along. Getting started. So getting started in QuickBooks, once you have logged into your QuickBooks account, for persons who have their QuickBooks account, once you have logged into your QuickBooks account, you will see the screen that is shown on to you just now. It is pretty much your landing page. Once you use your email, which will be your username as well as your password, the system will bring you to this page. Now, there are 5 steps in setting up your QuickBooks online account. The first step is to create the account. So if you have not yet created one, you can go ahead and create one, and I'll move further into the presentation to show you where you would go to create one. So the website, which is quickbooks.intuit.com, or if you would just type in quickbooks.com, Google will present you or will load the site for you. And so it will be redirected to a global site, which that simply means that it caters to the Caribbean market. There's a US market and a Caribbean market, and a global site pretty much helps to facilitate our market, which is the Caribbean. So it is a bit, it allows us to directly sign up for QuickBooks from that. In signing up for QuickBooks, you will find that there are a number of options available. These are the options that are currently available in QuickBooks. We have the Simple Start, and these are the current prices on QuickBooks website. You have Simple Start, Essentials, Plus, and Advanced. You would notice that the original prices are $28. They currently have a promotion of $14 per month for Essentials, Plus, and Advanced. For us, when we are recommending the plans to our client, we prefer them to think of Essential as a starter versus the Simple Start. The Simple Start is very restricted, especially for those businesses that deals with multiple currencies. Simple Start will not be good for you. You would need an Essentials plan that facilitates multiple currencies, namely like Jamaican dollars or the US dollar, as well as Canadian and European, the pound sterling, and others. So you could start out with the essential plan. It also helps you to keep track of bills. So that is a good plan to start with. And as your business grow, you can move up with the various plans that are offered by QuickBooks. You would have noticed in our communications to you that we too are having a promotion, which is pretty much way less than what QuickBooks is currently offering. We are offering the $6 US for 6 months. And so that is a no-brainer for me. I would have jumped on this deal and utilize it. You are able to get full access of your account, and it's not a case where we are going to be your bookkeeper. We're just facilitating the license. How it is that we're able to do this, because we are a QuickBooks Pro advisor and they provide us with exclusive discount that we can pass on to our clients. So hence I passed on this discount to you as somebody who is a part of the training. However, don't be daunted if it is that you do not have a QuickBooks account right now. I'll be sharing with you a dummy account that you can use during the training just to get yourself familiarized with the system. However, at the end of the dummy system, that's a case where you can save any information. It's just for you to utilize as the training go on. After a while, your information will not be saved. So once you close the browser, the information goes. Whatever was in the system will remain in the system. All right, but bear in mind that at the end of our session today, this discount will no longer be available. It's just for the training, and so it was curated for that. Thereafter, we currently have a promotion where you get it for $10 for 6 months. $15, my apologies. All right, I'm going to pause and share the link for the dummy account now so that you can access it. So you can get that from the chat. So once you click on it, there would be a system to verify that you're a human, and then you're able to go into the system. So I have just posted the link in the chat, so you can go ahead and click on that. If you already have your QuickBooks account, just sign into your account. Okay, so setting up your QuickBooks account, we are continuing with that. So the second step is to customize or personalize your QuickBooks. We are going to look at setting up your QuickBooks account as it relates to customizing it. So I'm going to our next screen. So this section, so once you are logged in to your QuickBooks account, to your top right-hand corner of the screen, you will see this icon. So what you will do now is to just click on that icon. Once you click on that icon, you will see this information. We're going to click at Account and Settings. That's where we're going to update the company's information. So for those who have their QuickBooks account, you're going to click on account and settings, and you can now go ahead and update as I provide clarification to you. All right, so let's move right along. So once you have clicked account and setting, you're going to see the first option, which is company. Once you click on that, you will be able to update the company's name or their legal name. So the legal name is a name that would have been on the company's Office of Jamaica document, the certificate of registration. You will put that as the legal name. Sometimes the legal name differs from the trade name. So for example, you will have Premium Consultancy Services Limited. However, we may be trading as PCSJM, just for argument's sake. So you could put PCSJM because that will be on the invoice that is being sent to your customer. So whatever name your customer knows you by, which is a legal name that has been registered, because bear in mind, whatever name that you are operating with must be registered with the company's Office of Jamaica. So if you have registered a business name, then both business name would be at the same location. For companies, however, they can register a company name as well as a business name. So the business name would pretty much be the trading name, and that would be the company name, and the legal name would be the official company name with the limited and such like. Next, we have company type, which you are either a sole trader or a limited liability company or a partnership. Those are the main three business type. So you will select that option, and then it's going to ask you what industry you're in. So there are some predetermined industries that you will see in the listing. Once you go through and you identify the one that best suits you, you will select that and save. Then you go down to your contact information. You have the company email address. You have the customer facing email address. So in the event where you have two different email address, one that you use with your customer and one that QuickBooks can communicate with you through, you can put that information there. You put the company's number, as well as if you have a website, you will know the information there. Okay, so just pause. So now, Naomi, what you'll have to do, hold on, let me just, once you click on this link, I'm going to the link right now. So I'm going to show you from this end. Find my company. Go on my company. All right, let me sign out of my account because it is showing my information. So this is the test profile. Continue. All right, so this is the sample company, the link. So you will have to click this icon here. Then you go to account and settings. Then you are able to update your information here. So you can update the name. And let's say it is the same as that. You will ignore this. This is it's a US-based numbering system. It is similar to our TRN, but we wouldn't insert the information here. If you have a company logo, you can also upload your company logo and you click save. Then you click this option here. Okay, so you can update. So the tax form, you're going to see these information at the end. The system is designed for both US and other countries. What you're pretty much doing is utilizing either if you're a sole proprietor, partnership, small business corporation, you can select one of these options. If you're a limited company, then it's a limited liability. If you're a partnership, sole proprietor, so let's select that option. So in this stage, we are a limited liability. I'm going to select that. For the industry, I can put professional services. So I can use this option, other accounting services, or just put a professional organization, whichever one can work. So if you're in the business of consulting, you will just put consulting and save. You can update your company email address, your telephone number, and the website. Company address here, you can update the company's address, client-facing address if it is different from the address that is noted here. So in the US, they have varying things that they use. So you have a legal address, company address, customer-facing address, especially when you have a production and you're selling products and you're selling from different warehouses. You can determine which of the address that is stated on your invoice, so you can utilize that there. Once all is done, you click done, and then you move to the other section. So you can click save, and it's just that the system, once you log out of it, it will not save it, that somebody else will go and see it. The usage, okay. So usage is not something that you will be used, because it just tells you what is allowed based on the plan that you have. In the live environment, this information is not there, hence I'm not really going through what is here. For persons, just pause, for persons who have already registered for their QuickBooks account and the invitation was sent to you to sign into the account, please use that invitation to get into your account. The link that was shared in the chat, you should not use that because you already have your QuickBooks account. So use the invite that was sent to your email to get access to your account. It is going to ask you to create a username for the account before you actually get into QuickBooks, right? Because that username that you are going to create, that is the password and the username that you're going to use going forward when you're signing into QuickBooks. So it's not a case where you're going to pay again if you had already paid us for the subscription. It is just setting you up, going through the motion of creating your username and your password. Then you will be able to completely accept the invitation that was sent to you. All right. If you're still having a challenge with that, you can let me know. Would love to have set you up before the session, but if you're just doing it, please click on the invite, go ahead and create your password, and you will get full access to your account. All right, so let's move along. I'm going back to my presentation. So Naomi, I think you should be good in following now as we continue in the session. Okay, so you can go to the sales option. From the sales option, now you are able to customize your invoice to your clients or customers, as well as you are able to set your preferred invoice term. I believe this is critical. When you're sending your invoice, the customer need to know, how soon should I make payment? Is it pay on receipt? Or is it due in 30 days? Is it due in 3 days? Is it due in 7 days, 14 days? Whatever the case may be, whatever the terms that you have discussed with the client or the perceived term, that need to be stated there so that there's no ambiguity as to when the customer should pay. By looking at your invoice, they should know when they should make a payment or by when. If you are in the business of providing products, then you will need to indicate the delivery method, or the delivery address, the shipping, is it that you're shipping. So you will need to turn on these features so that it is noted on the document, on the invoice. The custom transaction number, which is the invoice number, let it remain as automatic, so you're not going to do custom. Whatever it is there. However, if you choose, you can change that. You can put this on, and then maybe you want to have some letters at the beginning of the numbers, then you can very well do that. All right, we have the service date. So you have some persons, when they are generating their invoices, they want to note on the invoice when the service will be done. So for those of us who are in the service industry, then you would put the service date on your invoice if it has already happened or if it is going to happen. So you will put either date. If it is to come, you put the future date that the service will be provided, and you put the past date that the service was provided. Depending on the timing that you are generating your invoice, then the service date will need to be noted there if it is something that you want to be shared with your client or to be noted on the invoice. You can have the discount functionalities turned on so that when you look at the invoice, it will show that you had given a discount, as well as if a customer makes a deposit, then you will need to have it shown on the invoice that they had already made a deposit and the deposit goes against this invoice. What I find sometimes with some vendors or suppliers, this is not done properly. And so what they find is that the invoice is sent to their customer and 100,000, for argument's sake, is on it when the customer had already paid $50,000. What should have happened is that on the invoice, I will see the $100,000, then a line item that says deposit, put the amount that I had paid, and the net amount is the balance that is now due and should be paid. When we send an invoice without showing the deposit, it confuses the customer, and we don't want that, right? So we'll ensure to turn this on if it is that you require customers or your clients to make a deposit before the service is provided or before the product is shipped. Some industry accept tips, so you can know that there. So if you're in the business of Airbnb and you want your persons to, to provide you with a tip, then you can put that on there. All means it doesn't matter if that is something that you would want them to do. All right, so the tag function in QuickBooks, what it does, it allows us to group certain transactions or to keep a track of certain projects or transactions. So even though there's a project section in QuickBooks, for some plans, what you can do is to use a tag option to guide you along the way. So for example, you may have, there may be businesses that have different locations, And so if a particular expense is incurred for a location, you will enter the expense as normal, but then there is a section on the form which allows you to type the location for which this expense was incurred. It can be used for location, it can be used for projects. So if you're doing a special project that you want to keep track of all the costs that you would have incurred for that project, you can use the tag function. And the tag, you will just see a line item on the form, the invoice or the expense form, and you'll just type it in. And what it does is save whatever you type, it will be saved. So the next expense or the next invoice that you generate and you want to use that same tag, it's just a matter of start typing and it will pop up. For those of us who are in the industry to sell products, you would know of the SKU number. You can insert a column. You can turn this on so that it shows the SKU on the invoice, as well as it helps with the inventory management process. So just to note that if you have any question, you can put it in the comment, and at the end of this part of the presentation, I will answer that set of questions in relation to this part of the presentation, all right? So will the sales form, the sales setting continues where you are able to put late fees. No, depending on the industry that you are in, you are able to communicate to your customers or to your clients that, hey, if you pay me late, there's going to be a late fee that is going to be associated with your invoice. Now, is this best practice or not? I don't know. Well, not that I don't know, but it's just that some persons decide to do it, and what I do know, customers don't pay it. So what you're pretty much doing is incurring a charge in your business that customers do not pay, and you eventually have to write it off in your book. So you have to be mindful of the industry that you're in, and if there's something that is widely accepted in your industry, then you can implement the late fee. But apart from that, I would recommend not to turn it on if it is not widely accepted in your industry that you are providing a service or product in. You're able to do progressive invoicing. What is that? It is simply if you had generated an estimate to a customer, estimate quotation, and it has a number of things to be done or number of products to be sold to them, but they want to purchase the service or the product in parts, then what you can do is to just generate one quotation, and as the service is provided or as the products are sold to them, you can generate an invoice from that estimate, and it will continually to generate the invoice until all the amounts that were noted on the estimate is fully billed to the client. Another option is that it you can have one invoice that is generated, not just estimate, you can have an invoice that is generated, for argument, like $1 million. Is to create multiple invoices in piecemeal. And with that, you would be able to determine how often the invoice goes out. Is it every month you send 20% of that 1 million? So if you don't want to do that option, there's another option that you can use where it is called recurring transaction. You just set up an invoice in the system and say, okay, send an invoice to John Brown every month in the amount of $50,000, and you can tell them when to start and when to end. And by the end date, then you will determine when that end date is and if it will equal to the total amount of services as per the contract that you and the client would have signed, as well as the amount that you would have agreed to be charging them, and they would have accepted those amounts. All right. The messages, there's a message section on the sales form. So if you want to tell the customer that 50% is required before the service is provided, or before the product is shipped to you, you can use the message option there. You can have that generic message be stated there. And so customers would be mindful that they're not getting the service or they're not getting the product until a payment is made. You can also set up reminders in the system whereby if you send your invoice out to your customers, then you can turn this on and it automatically sends a reminder to the customer based on what you would have set it. So you may set it to say, okay, remind the customers every after 7 days of the due date, or 1 day after the due date, or 2 days after the due date that this invoice is unpaid. And what will happen is that the system will continue to send a reminder until that invoice is marked paid. So what it means on your part is that once the customer, the client, makes a payment, you have to go in the system and update the payment so that the reminder will not be sent to the client that they still owe you. All right. Online delivery. So if you edit this, it means it just shows you the email options of the form that will be sent to the client, and you can choose how you want that to be shown. The statement, so on the statement of account that is shared with your customer, you can have the option to send a statement of account, and at the bottom of that statement of account, it shows if they have, suppose they have multiple invoices that are unpaid or remain unpaid as at the time when you're generating the invoice. What the aging table does, it shows you the invoice, the total amount of invoice that are outstanding for 30 days, or for 60 days, or for 90 days. So that's what it means by show aging table at the bottom of the statement. So the aging table is group of buckets of 30, 60, 90 and over, 90 days and over, and then it will put the total amounts that are outstanding based on the time frame under each heading. Okay, so the next step is to look at the expense option. So you are able to show item tables on expense and purchase orders. So item tables is pretty much where on a expense document, right? You may have purchased multiple things from a supplier. And so what QuickBooks will allow you to do is to enter each line item in QuickBooks versus entering the summary of all that was purchased in QuickBooks. Now, I only recommend the itemized posting if it is you're going to track the items for inventory purposes. If you're not tracking those purchases for inventory reasons, there's no need to itemize everything on the document. So if you bought something from PriceSmart for the business, for argument's sake, you bought a file folder, you bought pens, inks, and such like. What you can do is based on the expense categories. So all of those things that I listed, all of them will not be going to the same expense account. So the only itemization that I recommend is you will only itemize what goes to a specific expense account. So the filing cabinet is pretty much an asset for the business. So you'll put that to an asset account. Right, the pens are stationary expense, so they put that to stationary, right? But I wouldn't recommend you to list out everything that is on the invoice. What you'll have to do, however, is put a summary of what was bought. Of like items, you just put a summary and you group them. But for assets, for argument's sake, you have to indicate what was actually purchased because you'll need to track that. All right, I'm going into a little bit of accounting there, but just to give you an idea as to how to um to record your transactions, there's not much of a need to itemize and to list out everything, because sometimes the invoices are very long and you are not required to do that. All right, they track expenses and items by customer. So for those of us, even in the service of even in business of providing products, you can use this option. So let's say for my company, I pay for a particular service for a client of mine. When I'm posting that expense, I am able to indicate who I paid it for. There's a section where I can enter the client's name, and bear in mind your client's information would have already been entered into your system because you would have been sending them invoices. So you'll see a section that says customer, and you'll just enter your customer name when you're posting the expense. So this section, if you turn it on, you can track for your customers any expense that you would have incurred on their behalf, especially if you're planning to bill them for it. So if you're planning to bill them for it, then I would suggest that you put these two options on. So for those who are in the consulting business, those who are in the service industry, those are the industries that mainly utilize this function. Once they want to track the expenses for a particular client, then they will turn these two on. Even if they're not billing them for it, it is best to turn it on. So at the end of the day, you can do your analysis to say, okay, how much have I incurred for this client versus how much I'm charging them? And then you can have an idea as to what to do going forward. Should you increase your price towards them, So it's best to turn these on so that for planning purposes and decision-making purposes, it provides insight as to how to move forward. So purchase orders, persons use purchase order on a case-by-case basis. Not many small businesses uses it. If it is that you have a credit term with a supplier or a vendor, sometimes they will ask you for a purchase order. And a purchase order is pretty much a document which outlines your intended purchase from a supplier, and it would have been approved by the relevant persons or the authorized persons in a company, so that when that document is presented to the supplier, you're pretty much going into a contract with them to say, I promise to pay you for these products. And so the supplier would give you the products on the premise that, hey, you give me a purchase order, I'm going to give you the products, and then they'll give you an invoice and you make payment, right? And so that's in the sense of where purchase orders are usually used. You are able to also put messages on purchase order, but oftentimes small businesses don't really use purchase order unless they have a credit term with a supplier, a credit term which is not pay upon receipt. So if the supplier gives them a 30-day credit or whatever the case may be, then they would usually ask for a purchase order before they provide you with any product or even service. The other section is the advanced section. And the accounting aspect, this section is very critical. So the first month of your fiscal year, so your fiscal year is pretty much your financial year. I highly recommend having a financial year that is January to December. Reason being, for tax purposes, the tax authority requires us to have a tax year of January to December. And in the event where you have deviated from that, you will have to write a letter to the Commissioner General of the Tax Administration, Jamaica, requesting of them to change your period your tax period from January to December to whichever date you may want, but you must have a valid reason for doing that. If they don't feel that reason is valid, they will not grant it. Hence, I just recommend just have the standard January to December in doing your fiscal year. What I find, some people believe that if they register their company, for argument's sake, September, let's use this year, September 2024, it means that your financial year starts September 2024. No, you were registered September 2024, but it doesn't mean your financial year started September 2024. Your financial year can still be January to December, but you are only trading from September to December. You get it? So then come the following year, your full financial year now will be from January 1 to December 31st. All right. So their fiscal year and the income tax year should be the same. Highly recommended. Unless you have a valid reason why you want it to be changed, then you can go ahead and put your fiscal year, your first month of your fiscal year. And just bear in mind that for tax purposes, when you're doing your income tax return, you would need to submit a letter before you can file your tax return, asking for change in the period. The accounting method is accrual basis and not cash basis. For accounting purposes, accrual is pretty much you account for your transaction, not when you receive it, but when you know that it is going to become due. So for example, with your purchases, you may have let's look at your telephone bill. There is a date when the bill is generated versus a date when you should pay it. The accrual basis would be the date when the invoice is generated. That is the date that you put in the system, not the date when you pay the bill. So the expense did not occur on the day when you pay the bill. The expense had occurred, or you incurred the expense on the date when the invoice was generated. You can always make payment afterwards, but it's at the point when the obligation becomes due. That's when you record your expense. It's different from when you just went to the shop and you buy something that the date of the transaction is the same date. So it's okay to enter that. But for based on the example that I shared earlier, the earlier date is the invoice date, and it is the invoice date that is used to record the transaction in the system versus the date that you made the payment. So as a given, it is always accrual. That's not changing. Close the books. For persons who utilize this option, it is used for persons who have done an audit on their accounting records, and once an audit is done, no changes should be made in the accounting system. So you are able to close the year after the year is ended and the audit is completed, then you can close it. If you are not doing audit, if you're not doing anything of that nature, I don't recommend you to turn on this function. All right, so you leave it as off unless you have an audit that will be conducted on your account, and it's after the audit is completed, then you can close out the books. And by closing out the books, you're pretty much closing out a particular year so that nobody can go back and make adjustments to that year. Or if you have an accountant that reviews your books for you and you know that there's no outstanding transactions to be posted, after the accountant reviews the account and they are satisfied that all is well, then you can close out the account. And even sometimes, even at that point, persons still don't close it out because they may just have some entry to be posted for whatever reason, and it allows them to post it because the account is open. If it is off, if it remains on, as in close the books, then there's another step that you'll have to go through to get it open so that the entries can be done. So if you're not doing any sort of auditing of that nature, then you'll just leave it off. The company type, the tax form, this is not applicable to Jamaica. This is just based on the US tax system. So you can do that. The chart of account, which is very critical, it allows you to see the accounts that are relevant to the entity, and it allows you to capture all the deductions that are necessary for the business, and it helps when it's time for tax return. So you can enable account numbers whereby, let's say you have sales account, there's a number in front of the word sales account. So some persons do that, which is highly recommended for persons to use the number before the name. So you can turn that on if you so chooses. And the discount account, you have discount given, so you'll let that remain. So if it's a case where you are giving customers a discount, then that amount that you had given to a customer at a discount, it will be posted into the discount given account. So this is just notifying the system that whenever you're seeing me giving a discount on my invoice, then this is the account I want you to put it to, discounts given. If you wanted to go to another account, then you will need to make the change right here. The tips account, then you will also need to tell the system where you want the tip to be accounted, which accounts you want it to go, and you will need to put that information at that section. Billable expense income account. So in the event where you would have incurred an expense for a client or a customer, and you are going to bill back that amount to a customer or client, we will need to advise the system where we want that money go. So should we put it into a billable expense account, expense income account, or it should be shown in our sales account? You can decide where you want the money to go, or you may want to track that separately. So it's best to put it in an account where you can identify, oh, the only thing that goes into this account would have been expenses that I incur, and they are now paying me back, and it is going to go into that account. So you can choose to track classes, or you track your location. Tracking the location is pretty much self-explanatory, but what does it mean by tracking clear classes? Pretty much where you can determine what aspect of the business are you tracking. And what I mean by that, okay, for us, let me put my company as an example. So we provide business registration, we do accounting, we do training, we do taxation. So those are 4 classes, or 4 type of services. So your services can be your classes. And so what that means is that every invoice that I generated for business registration, that amount, I am able to generate a report by the class for all the invoices that I generated for business registration, as well as any expense I incur in relation to business registration. I can track it by the class. So when I pull a report by business registration by virtue of the class, it shows me all income, all expense, and it allows me to see if what I am charging the client, and what I have incurred, if all is well. So it is similar to the tag function that I shared earlier, but you can also use the track classes. So you have option as to how you want to keep a track of things, as well as it allows you to generate reports to make decisions. Automation, it says pre-fill form with previously entered content. You can turn this on if it is that your transactions are pretty much the same. But I don't recommend you to do that, because what it does is that if you enter a particular transaction before, when you click the form again to do a new transaction, it's the same thing going to populate in the form. And if you were distracted for 5 seconds or so, and then you go back on the form and you were wondering, should I just click save, or is it that this is a new form that I should be adjusting? Even though sometimes when you copy a previous transaction that was posted, QuickBooks will notify that this is a copy. So this is not something that was previously entered. Well, not, I shouldn't say enter, but it is not the information that you want to save now. So it means that you will need to edit what was copied before you saved. But I highly recommend do not turn on pre-fill form unless it's a case where most of your expenses that you're entering at a particular moment in time are similar, and so it save on time in entering over the details. You can just allow it to remain as is, and you just change the figure, change a few descriptions, and you go ahead and save. So this automate and shift section is just to help to save time, but it doesn't apply to everybody. Automatically apply credits. So in the event where there's a credit on the system for a customer, so the customer may have paid you for a product or service, and you may have to reduce the invoice, even though they pay you in full. So what you have to do is to create a refund, but instead of paying out the money to them, the credit stays on the account, so that the next invoice that is generated, that credit would be offset with the invoice. You can tell the system that once there's a credit on the system, it automatically be applied to the next invoice that is generated, which again, it helps to save time so that you don't have to go back and reapply the credit to a new invoice that is generated. All right, so the advanced setting continues. You are able to automatically invoice unbilled activities. I don't recommend this one as well, because most times you would need to review your activities before you go ahead and bill. So these sections pretty much apply to service industries, whereby you're tracking your activities that you would have performed for a particular client, and then you can decide what is billed to them and what is not billed, especially for some plans that you are able to track your time. Then this section here, you are able to track your time. Then once the time is posted to the system, it would, if you turn this on, it will automatically bill the client. But I don't recommend that. It's best to review, and because sometimes you may have done something for a client and it is not, you feel as if, you shouldn't bill it at this point. So you just be mindful of that, to not turn this on. Automatically apply bill payment. This is a yes or no, because what it does is that you can turn it on in the event that the bill, so let's say the bill was sent to you today, but you paid it today, then, and if you know you always pays your bill same day, then if you automatically turns this on, then it will apply the payment. The only thing with that, you will need to know which account the payment should be applied to. Because once you're applying a bill payment, you may have paid it by cash, or you may have paid it by bank transfer or a credit card. And so you would just need to be mindful which account to set it in the system to say once you have payment of a bill is always paid by way of credit card, or it is always paid by cash, or it is always paid by direct deposits, which is usually not the case. Sometimes it is either cash or credit card or debit card. So to avoid the mess in your account, I don't recommend to automatically apply bill payment. Currency, so this would be applicable for persons who have essential plan, whereby your home currency would be Jamaican dollars. And then you'll turn on this function whereby you are able to post transaction or generate invoices in another currency, so like US or the pound sterling or Canadian dollars. Oh, the project section, you are able to turn this on so that you can organize all your job-related activities in one place. So it groups all the transactions that for a particular project. So what would have to happen, you will have to create a project, and then you can be able to link expenses or income in relation to that product. Other preferences, so you can set how you want the date format to be. So is it a month, date, year, or day, month, year? You have the option of changing that. How you want your currency format to be, how you want to call your customer label. So is it going to stay as customer, or are you going to call them clients, or are you going to call them members? So it depends on what your industry is. You can choose what you call your customers. This is critical. Warn if duplicate check number is used. It's best to turn this on because you don't want any duplicate transactions in your system. Warn me when I enter a bill number that is already been used for that vendor. Turn it on. However, you should bear in mind that some vendors recycle their numbers every year. So you may have entered a transaction in 2023 for a particular vendor and their invoice number was 10. In 2024, for that same vendor, they're going to recycle the numbers, so they're going to have 10 again. So what's going to happen when you're trying to enter the invoice in 2024 and you insert 10 as the invoice reference, the system is going to tell you that, hey, this is already in the system for this vendor. But if you know that you did not enter this bill before for 2024, for the year 2024, for argument's sake, then what you can do in order to differentiate each transaction, you put the year of the transaction dash their invoice number. That's the only time you change a vendor invoice number. Usually, I don't recommend persons changing invoice number because that is their unique number that you can identify with them in the event that you want to query something. But as it relates to when they duplicate or when they repeat their invoice number, in order to differentiate them in the system, you can put the year. So let's say 2024-10. You can use it at that point. Apart from that, never change a supplier number. And I'm not saying to change it on the document that they provide to you, just in the system when you're posting it. All right, so warn me if duplicate. So you're signed into the account, and for 1 hour, you step away from the system. But when you return, the system going to sign you out, especially when you're working in an environment where other persons are, moving towards your devices to and fro. You really don't want them to see your accounting information, right? So I would recommend that you close your computer. And even by virtue of closing it, it will automatically times out after the time that you set here. So you have to bear that in mind. All right. So the another way in which you can set up your account is by importing information into the system. So let's say you are currently using another accounting system, or you were using another accounting system. Then what you can do is to download the information from that accounting system. So you can download all your sales, all your expenses, all your customers, all your products and services that you would have been listed in the system, everything that you would have entered in the system. They should have a function where you can download your records. Once that is downloaded, then QuickBooks allows you to upload your customer, your vendor, your chart of accounts, your products and services by way of Excel. file or a CSV format file. So it's not excluding you from uploading. You don't necessarily have to starting right now. But if you were using a system before, then you can always import it into this system and continue. So if you want to import into the system, once you log into your account, you go to your gear menu. So this is your gear menu. And you can click the option to import data. So once you click on that, it is going to carry you to this screen. So based on what you want to import, you click on it. The good thing about this is that sometimes the format that you would have downloaded from your previous system, it may not be the same format that QuickBooks will accept the information into their system. So once you click on the option that you want, there's a option for you to download a template. So they will provide you with a template to use to re-upload information. So you can click on that, it will automatically download, and you just copy over your information into that template, save it, upload it. It's going to ask you to confirm the date format, going to confirm, just a few things to ensure that it is matching everything from your record into QuickBooks. And so I recommend though that if you are uploading from a previous system to QuickBooks, you start out with your products and services first, then you upload your suppliers, then you upload your customers, your chart of account. Once all of these are entered, then you can upload your invoice and your bills. Reason being, if you start to upload your invoices, it means that the system would need to recognize a customer. If you have not uploaded a customer, what's going to happen when the information is uploaded? QuickBooks going to have a challenge. Challenge in the sense where it's going to tell you that these customers are not in the system, and it's going to ask you to go and create the account. So it's best to upload these first and the products and services first before uploading your invoice, because these are information that will be on the invoice, as well as the chart of account, because the chart of account, whatever the product and service is linked to a chart of account. So it will tell the system, okay, if I am selling something, once I record that on my invoice, the account that I want it to be reflected in is my sales account. And the sales account is shown in the chart of account. So you just upload these critical stuff first before you can upload a bill and your invoices. Another thing that we can look out for when you're setting up your account is to enter your opening balances. And this is just for persons who have a company bank account or a company credit card. Whatever the closing balance is at a particular point, we will need to enter that into the system. So for example, if your as I recommended, your financial year should be January, right? So if it is that you're just transitioning over into QuickBooks and you have been operating for a little while, then okay, what was the closing balance on your bank statement as at December 31st? Whatever amount is there on your bank statement, you are going to enter that as your opening balance as at January 1. All right. And so with that information, it allows QuickBooks to keep a running balance now of the amounts that are in your bank account, especially if your bank account is not linked. So it helps QuickBooks with a starting point of the amount for the business. All right. And next thing that we can do, which I find very useful, is to link your bank account. So you link the business bank account in QuickBooks. It allows you to categorize and to perform bank reconciliation very easily. And so what you will pretty much do is to link your bank account that you have. You'll have to sign in. There's a function in QuickBooks which helps you to do that. And what it does, it just pull over the information into QuickBooks. It prevents you from retyping or to posting or typing some expense. Once you're seeing it reflecting on your bank feed and you have the documentations for it, you can just go ahead and categorize that expense right away. Some of the information would already be populated, so it allows you for few postings, few things for you to type. The only drawback to that is not all the banks in Jamaica you are able to link on QuickBooks. However, you are able to upload the transaction nonetheless. So the banks that you are able to link to QuickBooks is NCB, Scotiabank, JMMB, and CIBC. Those are the 4 banks currently that you can link to QuickBooks. And when we say link to QuickBooks, it's not a case where you can do live transactions from QuickBooks. The only thing that will be shown in QuickBooks are transactions that you would have already performed on your banking platform, and it is just pulling over that information. You're not able to do any transfers or anything. Nobody can pull money out of your account when you link your bank account to QuickBooks. It's just a view option to pull the information from your account into QuickBooks, right? So it's a safe option. So it's not a case where persons can hack into your account that way. So you can rest assured that that is not the case. So how do you do that? When you sign into QuickBooks, you will look to your navigation bar, which this dark section here is called a navigation bar, right? There's a banking option. Once you click on that, you're going to click connect account. Once you click on the connect account, it's going to carry you to another screen for you to select the bank that you want. And so when I ask you to put in your credential, the credentials that you're going to put in is the credentials for your online banking account. And it will do its thing in the background to connect both system. It's also going to ask you to set up what is the time frame should they start pulling the information from? Should it be from the beginning of the year? Should it be from September 1? Or whichever date you chooses, that's the only information it's going to pull over. And you'll just, once it does it, you are able to continue to see the information coming across. All right, so this has brought us to the end of this part. I'm now going to answer the questions that I am seeing in the chat. So the first question was asking if the deposit option, can it be linked to one specific invoice, or is the option has to be open when doing invoices? So the deposit options, once it is turned on, it is shown on all invoices, not on just one specific one, right? So once it is turned on from the settings, it will be shown on all invoices. Tag features exclusively used with Excel. No, the tag functionality is used for your income, for your sales on the invoice and on your expenses. So the both options, it is available there. The tag option is available for your invoices as well as your expenses. And so that is the reason why once you put the tag option, you're able to generate a report to see the income based on the tag function that you have and the expenses for that same tag. So should you close your books after taxes are paid, or is it a special scenario that requires auditor? So for the closed books, so you have persons who, it's not a special function that requires an auditor. So let me rest that. However, if you close your books after you have paid your taxes, then usually if it is that you are eventually down the line plan to do an audit, it can be reopened. The account can be reopened. And usually when there's an audit, sometimes the auditor may require you to do a particular entry in the account. And so you will have to reopen the account so that that entry can be done. So it's not a case where the auditor has to do it, but you can close it if you so choose after you have paid your taxes once all information has been recorded in the system. So once you know that all your income has been recorded, all your expenses has been recorded, and all the relevant journals that needed to be posted are done, and you have filed your tax return, then you have the option to close the book so that it doesn't changes. So automatically apply bill payment is great for monthly subscriptions. So monthly subscriptions, so this is where it would have been automatically pulled from their account, right? So for example, if you utilize like a PayPal functionality whereby if you do a subscription through PayPal, it automatically charges the client. So in QuickBooks, what you can do is to set up that once the month comes, the invoice is generated or the bill is generated, and you apply the bill payment. So either from an income side or even an expense side, you can automatically do the bill payment function and to set it which account the payment is made from. Yes, you should be able to utilize that function. All right, so if you have no other questions in relation to what we have done so far, or is it that my responses to your questions, are you okay with that? Do you need any further clarification? All right, I'm not seeing any comments that you need further clarification. So let's move on to getting around the system, right? Okay, hold on. Jamaica still does not have any access to get a business Stripe account, correct? We don't, because some of the requirements that the Stripe is asking for, we do not have that. So they're asking, I think the last time, because I too tried to create a Stripe account and I was having some challenges, and so I forfeited that option. I'm gonna put a plug here. I don't get any affiliate. I'm not affiliated to them of any sort, but I recently found out of a local company. They are powered by NCB. The name of it is Easy Payments. It allows you to accept credit card payments, or they give you a QR code. You can generate a QR code. Customers can scan it, and you can accept payment by way of credit card. And they transfer the funds into your account at a particular time frame. You can get both US and Jamaican amount. So it depends on the services that you are provided. If it is of a subscription base, it may not be ideal because it does not automatically charge their card. But if it's an invoice-based service, then you can utilize that option. I can type the name later in the chat just to be sure that I give her the exact name. Okay, good. Okay, just another. So deposit option is not on, but you need to apply a deposit now. How would you do that? Okay, so if your deposit option is not on, I'm actually going to show you how to do a deposit payment as we go along. So you can hold that question and it will be shown later on where I show you how to create a deposit for a customer in the system. But it's not on, but need to apply a deposit now. Okay. So I'll show you how to do the deposit and then you apply the deposit to the customer. All right, so please ensure to bring that point up if you don't see me showing it to you, all right? So getting started, as I was sharing with you, this is your dashboard. And you are able to change the view of it. Let me, okay, this is good. Okay, so you are able to view your dashboard, and pretty much it gives you an overview of what is happening in your business. So this section, it gives you a quick view of, okay, how many open invoice you have, how many overdue invoices, or the invoices that were paid in the last 30 days. So it kind of give you a quick view. It tells you, it breaks down your expenses based on the expense categories that you have in your chart of account. So whatever would have been entered in the system in the last 30 days, it shows you a snippet and it shows you which of those expenses are greater for that particular month. It gives you a brief view of your profit and loss. So it shows your total income and your total expenses in the last 30 days, or you can put in the last 90 days or 365 days. You can change what is shown on your screen. It also shows you your bank accounts that you have in the system, not just your bank account, but your credit card and your cash on hand or petty cash accounts that are set up in the system. So just to tell you once more, is this section here, the dark section is called your navigation bar. So if you want to go to your dashboard, if you want to go to your bank feed, if you want to go to expenses, or if you want to generate an invoice, you can go use this option. So there's a number of ways to get to what you want. And so these are the main ways of getting to where you want. Option 1 and 2 is ideally for if you want to generate your invoice and posting your expenses, right? And these are all options. Not all of these options are available in all the plans, but it is standard for banking, expenses, invoicing, cash flow, and reports and taxes to be in all plans. Standard for that, as well as accounting. The other option is new. So let me go. So the navigation bar, just explain where that is. Then you have the new function. When you click on the new menu, you will see all of this listed. And then you're able to select what you want. Are you going to make a sale? And that is just another way of saying create an invoice or do a sales receipt. So you have two functions, either you create an invoice or you do a sales receipt. So when it says make a sale, it's pretty much a sales receipt. You can create an invoice. You can receive invoice payment. You can create estimates, receive credits, receive credit card credits, send customer statements, and in money out, which would have been expense. So money in is in relation to your sales activities. Money out is in relation to your expense activities. So you can add an expense, you can add a bill, you can pay bills, you can pay down on a credit card. So you'll make payment to your credit card, not directly to the bank, but to account for the payment that you would have made to your credit card. You can utilize this function here. You can write a check. So for persons who utilize check, physical check, you are able to record that in the system. And QuickBooks does have a functionality whereby you can print your checks, but that is for more persons who have coordinated with their banks to get blank checks. And then they would have a specialized printer to put the checks to feed into the printer, and then the information is printed onto the check, the supplier name and the amount is printed on the checks. So, but in our instances, we're not printing checks, but we're recording the checks that were prepared. So you would have to ensure that you utilize the check numbers as stated on the physical check that you are writing. So the print functionalities doesn't apply to you if you're not printing checks. You can create your purchase order from here. You can give credits and give refunds. For persons who use the payroll function in QuickBooks, which that doesn't apply to our market because their payroll rules are different from Jamaica payroll rules. So we really don't utilize the QuickBooks Payroll, because they do have QuickBooks Payroll, and that is mainly for US persons or those in other markets. You have the function of setting up contractors in the system, and it allows you to pay them. But when QuickBooks has this function, it means that you are making payment to them, because QuickBooks has a QuickBook payment option whereby you can sign on to that, and it allows you to make payment directly to persons. But it's usually utilized by the other markets, not the local market, not our local market. The other functionalities that you can access from using the new menu, you can transfer between bank accounts. So let's say you did a transfer between one of your business account to another business account, then you can record that in the system by utilizing this function. You can record a bank deposit whereby you make a deposit to the bank account, or record your bank deposit. You make a deposit into your bank account, you record that. You can track your mileage for persons who would have to charge back mileage to clients. You visited a client location, and so you track your mileage from point A to point B. And if you want to charge that back to your client, you are able to do so. So you can track your mileage from there. You can track your time as well. If you want to add a new product or service in the system, you can access it from here. If you want to add a customer, a vendor, or your employee or contractor, you can add it from here. So QuickBooks does allow you to keep a track of a listing of your employees, even though you are not accounting for the payroll in QuickBooks. It is best to add your employees. If you have employees or if you have contractors, you add them in the system so that when you are making payment to them, they would have already been set up in the system, and you can account for those payments to that particular employee or contractor. All right, so next is utilizing the gear menu, which we have been looking at that from earlier, and it pretty much allows you to update your company records. You can look at the list. The list is pretty much your product and your services that you are offering, as well as you can set up recurring transactions. I was mentioning earlier that if you have a particular client, you sign a contract that you're providing them with a service every month for a particular amount, you can set up an invoice to automatically generate every month for a particular amount, for a particular date, and when that recurring invoice should end. Instead of you going in the system every month to generate that invoice, you can set it up one time and forget about it. It will automatically generate until the date that you would have told it to stop. So that helps you to save time. And you are able to attach documents to your invoices or to an expense that you post. So you can upload here, or if you download a mobile app, it's also user-friendly. There's a mobile app. You can download a mobile app and you can upload from your mobile device. So the other tools that you can utilize, I showed you the import data functionalities earlier. You are able to export data from QuickBooks. And so the same information that you can import, you can export those too. So you can export your customer listing, you can export your vendor listing, you can export your products and services, your sales, your bills, everything. You are able to export that information. The reconciling functionality is mainly for persons who have the need to reconcile their bank accounts and your credit card. I highly recommend doing your reconciliation. You can do it monthly or quarterly, but it is always encouraged to do your reconciliation, because what that does, it allows you to identify any missing transactions or even any duplicated transactions, and you are able to fix that before the year ends. There's a budgeting functionality in QuickBooks for some plans. And so you are able to set a budget, and then you can generate a report to compare your budget against your actual. It is recommended that as business persons, you have a budget in mind. It helps you to work towards something. And then what it also does is allow you to keep track of how well you are actualizing those plans, and if there's a need for any changes as you go along in the financial year. You can look at, so the audit log pretty much shows you your logon history. So especially if you have shared access to other persons to your account, because you are able to provide or to allow other persons to access your account based on your set requirements. And so if you want to see how many times they have logged on to do, especially if you have employees or contractors, you can look to see how often they log on to your account and to validate the days that they would have worked. All right. Order checks, these are for overseas persons who utilize QuickBooks payment options. And so they are able to order checks from QuickBooks because they provide that service to persons. These other options are mainly for overseas, but not that you can't use the case center. So the case center, you pretty much view and you are able to see certain scenarios. There's a profile option. If you click the profile option, it's similar to the accountant setting. It's just that it is more focused on you, the individual, rather than the company. So it will ask for your name, your address, and such like, just to keep a profile of you. All right. So it's not something that you have to complete, but it is there. And you can refer a friend to QuickBooks and so forth like that. So another thing that you can utilize in QuickBooks, which sometimes I find very easy to do for me, I like to use a search option in QuickBooks because sometimes you want to find a particular transaction. I don't remember, if I had posted it or who I posted it for. And what you can do is to enter the search option. You can search by the transaction number if you remember it. You can search by the date, so it will show you all the transactions for that particular date that you would have entered. You can search by the amount. So if you only remember the amount of $5,000, you put in $5,000, the 5000, you don't have to put in the cents unless there is actually a cent. You put that in and it will show you all the transaction with $5,000 in it. Or if you have the name of the supplier or the vendor or the customer, you put the name in and it brings you to the transaction that you're looking for. So when you want to generate an invoice or even an expense, right? This is what it looks like. A sample of what it will look like. So there are the who, the when, and the what, and the how much. So the who are you paying, or who is paying you? And so it would be this. You must have somebody that you're charging for the service. And when the transaction happened in real life, which would have been the invoice date, when is the transaction? And what exactly are you charging them for? So you will select the product or the services that you're charging for, or what they are charged you. Bear in mind, it's best to have a description to give the customer an idea of what they are purchasing from you, and it's best to put the amount. For us, even though you see tax option here, not everybody should be charging GCT on their invoice. You should only charge GCT on your invoice if you are registered for GCT. The only time you should register for GCT is if your sales for the year is 10 million or more. If your sales is not 10 million or more, you are not required to charge GCT on your invoice or collect GCT from your customer. All right, so this tax functionality does not apply to you. So it means that your transactions, on your invoice, it would be exclusive of tax. There's no tax, it's outside of the scope of tax. And so you are not required to account for GCT at the moment until you have reached that threshold of $10 million for the year. Now, this has brought us to our 10 minutes break. Okay, so the question that was asking, I'm going to paraphrase instead of explaining everything. So pretty much Alia wants to find out if while she was an independent contractor, she would have received, or she gives a scenario, not necessarily her, but the person would have received $10 million while being an independent contractor. Should GCT would that be treated as a sale? And the other part of the question is, what if the contracted income is from more than one client and it exceeds the 10 million? No, independent contractors, it would mean that they would have to provide or submit an invoice to the company that they're working with. So if they are providing a service to a company and they're the one who have to send an invoice to that company, even if there's no invoice processes, once you're treated as an independent contractor, you are providing a service to them, and it goes into another element, which is not really a QuickBooks training session. It doesn't cover under a QuickBooks training session, but I'll give you a good understanding of how to live away here with an understanding of how to operate. So what should have happened is that if it's a case where you're an independent contractor and you would have billed them $10 million, not just one time, but throughout the year, the accumulation of what you would have billed them amounts to 10 million. Then as at the point when you have met the 10 million marker, then GCT should have been registered. The person should have been registered for GCT and you charge GCT on the invoice. That is the ideal situation. However, you have some companies who treat persons as independent contractors, but they are really employees. So we'll have to look into the true relationship between the company and the individual. For if it is an employee relationship based on certain criteria that the tax authority looks at, then employees are not required to register for GCT, right? However, if you are a small business entity and you have multiple clients, or even if you're a sole trader, you have multiple clients, and you, based on the accumulation of the sales that you would have been invoicing to your clients, once you're about to meet the 10 million mark, you should register for GCT and you should start to charge GCT on those invoices. You would also be required to file a GCT return on a monthly basis. Whatever GCT that you would have charged to your clients, you are able to get a tax credit for GCT that you would have paid when you are buying your supplies for your business, and offset that GCT with the GCT that you would have collected from your customer or client, and the net of that should be paid over to the tax authority. All right, so that's as simple as I can put it. If you need further help or training with GCT, then that's something that I provide. All right, you're welcome. All right, so let's move into recording transactions. Without your customers, you wouldn't have a company, right? You wouldn't have a business. And so we need to keep track of our customer information, their balances, how much they had paid us. And when your QuickBooks payment is done, or when your account is set up for your customers and you record the customer payment or deposit to the bank. So what does that mean? When you create the customer profile, you will have generated an invoice, and when the customer makes payment on that invoice, when you go in and just do the face payment, whereby you see the invoice, you click receive payment, and you enter how much you received, then in the back end, QuickBooks will close out the invoice for you, so you will see that it is paid. So to set up your customer profile, you can use your navigation bar by clicking on the sales, or if you use the new menu, once you click on that, you go under the section where it says other, and you will click add your customer, right? Then once you click on your customer, you select new customer, you populate this information. So you put the company name, you put the email, even so if you are sending your invoice, not necessarily to a company, but to an individual, you put the individual information in the required space. You put their address, because it looks presentable when you know the company's or the individual's address that you're doing business with. You put it there. If you don't know it, just put Jamaica. Just put Jamaica and you move right along. Because depending on what you're providing to them, especially if it is service, and if you don't necessarily need to know their address, you just need to know where they are located, then you just put the country that they are located in. If it is that you are selling product, you definitely need to know where the persons are so that you can ship the product to them. So you need to enter this. What I want you to bear in mind though is that for persons who transact in multiple currencies, so for example, Jamaican dollars and US dollar, you will need to set up two profiles. One for Jamaican dollars, one for US dollar. When you're setting up the US account, you will have an option. There's an option to indicate that the transaction should be US, or it will ask you what is the currency for this customer, and you need to select the preferred currency, which is USD. What I suggest too is that when you are writing the customer name, just a dash and put USD so that you can differentiate by looking at the name, you know which of the account is the Jamaican dollar versus the US dollar. But 99.9% of all accounting system does not facilitate having one account for multiple currencies when you have a customer. So it is not the only deficiency in QuickBooks. It's a deficiency in most accounting system where you can't have one customer with multiple currencies. It's a deficiency in all, and until the developers have found a way to fix it, then we will have to have two customer profiles in the system if it is that you transact in different currencies with that one customer. So there are a number of ways you can record sales, right? So you can generate an invoice or use the sales receipt functionality or record a deposit or import it from other systems, right? And we're going to quickly look into each of these areas. So when you're generating an invoice, you can utilize, this is what it will look like, which I pretty much show you something similar to this earlier. You would go to the new button, or even on your navigation bar, the sales. If you click on sales, then you should be able to do a new transaction. So you can utilize either of those options to generate an invoice. And once you click on the invoice option, you populate the respective columns and you save. And that is recorded as your invoice. You save it and you email it to your client so that they can get a record of the invoice and they'll know when to make payment to you, right? So that's one option. The other option is by way of a sales receipt. So it's by way of a sales receipt. So this functionality can be used especially when you have immediate transfer transaction with the client. So you enter what the customer pays you, and at that point you will need to know which account the person is making payment to. So if it's a passing of cash, especially for persons who are selling products, then you would just select the cash account as the account for which the payment is made to. If it's a case where it's a direct deposit, a bank transfer, then you will use that. But usually for sales receipt, you would have collected either by cash, or if you have a point of sale machine, you use a point of sale machine. And so that would be by way of a card, which if it's a point of sale, it's going to eventually reach into your bank account. So you'll need to know which bank account is linked to a point of sale, and you select that when you're generating the sales receipt. And so this is just a step. You click on a new menu or the navigation bar, you go to sales and you will see sales receipts. And you want to click on that, you populate the form. The forms look similar as the invoice. The only difference is that you will need to know the payment options. So whatever payment option it is, it can be cash, direct deposit, by way of card, then you will need to put that. Reference number is just something that you can create if it's one and you count. It doesn't really matter, or you can leave it blank. And you need to know which account it is deposited to. Is it your cash on hand? Is it going to be placed in an undeposited funds account? And then when the money is then deposited into your account, into your bank account, then a transfer can be made from the undeposited funds account to your bank account. So you can decide how you choose this. It's similar to an invoice. The only thing that's different is this section here, because it means that you need to know where the money is going. As by virtue of the name sales receipt, I mean you're receiving the payment. No, you're receiving the payment at the present moment. And what it does too, it follows the invoice sequence number that you have in the system. So it doesn't go by a different sequence than the invoice sequence that you have. So it will be captured into your sales information. So you can use the make deposit function to record as sales. So the only thing is that not necessarily a sale, but it records the money that is received. So if a client gives you a money upfront before you generate your invoice, you can record a deposit, but it will not be shown as a sale that was recorded, right? It's also a deposit. So if you were to generate a sales report, for argument's sake, then that deposit will not be seen in the sales report, because all the customer did was to give us some money on account for whatever service that you're going to provide to them. So when that invoice is now generated, then you can apply the deposit to the invoice. All right. So if you click the new button and you select bank deposit, so the bank deposit will be under the other transaction, the other services, other option. You will select the bank deposit, and it's going to ask you to add new deposits, and you'll complete who the deposit is coming from and which account the money is in. Is it in the cash account? Is it in the bank account? Is it in the undeposited funds account? It's going to show there, right? When the invoice is generated now, then you are able, first you'll have to generate the invoice. So this is how it looks, the bank deposit option. So it asks for who you receive it from and for which account it should be shown in, and payment method. So is it by check, cash, or bank deposit. You put the information there. If there's a reference number, you put the reference number. The reference number here could be that even if you want to keep track of this deposit so that when the invoice is generated, you can link it, you may develop a unique number or a unique reference associated to the particular service that you are providing to that client, so that when you review this deposit account, you'll know offhand that, hey, this deposit is directly for a particular invoice that you're going to generate, right? And so that goes to and then it shows you where the cash should go to. Right, so once you select that, so that is saving the deposit. When that is completed now and you generate your invoice, once you generate the invoice on the account, and then what you can do is to apply payment. You'll have to apply the payment. When you apply the payment, it's going to show you in the system that, hey, there's a deposit on account for this person. Utilize it. So QuickBooks will show you that there's a deposit on the account. So once you generate the invoice, the next step is to go and to apply payment or to record payment. When you record the payment now, in that screen, it is going to show you, usually it is shown to the right of the screen, that there's a deposit on the account, or it is shown at the bottom of the screen that there is a deposit on the account. You click on the figure that is there as a deposit and click on the invoice that you want it to be applied to. And if it's a case where the deposit is less than the invoice amount, the only amount that will be applied or will be shown as paid is the amount that you would have posted as deposit. And what that will do, it will have a remaining balance on the invoice, and you are able to send that to the client. You can send an email to the client from QuickBooks to advise them that this is the balance on your account. You're also able to import your sales information from other systems. So this is mainly like for persons who are in e-commerce. So you can link your system into QuickBooks. So eBay, Amazon, and those other selling platform, e-commerce platform, you can link it to it. And there are other apps that can be linked into QuickBooks, and there's a section in QuickBooks that's labeled Apple. You can find this in the gear menu option. You will see the word app, and it shows you all the apps that can be linked into QuickBooks. You can link your MailChimp, where you can send emails to your clients. So once an invoice is generated or once a customer account is created, it automatically filters that information to MailChimp to have that as a listed audience for you, and you can communicate with your client from there by sending out monthly emails or weekly, or depending on the frequency, to your customers. All right, so money going out. So we were just looking at funds coming into the company by way of sales, either through your invoice or through your sales receipt, or deposit funds coming into your account, or by using other means. Now we're going to look at money going out of the system. And once money is going out, we need to know who we're paying. And so it's best to maintain a vendor account or a supplier account, as you may see it in QuickBooks. If you need to enter a bill or track purchases by vendor, then it's best to set up your vendor account. And the vendor list stores all information just like a customer account. It shows how much you owe and how much is overdue to the vendor. So it's best to set up the account. If it is that you have persons who work with you, I would highly recommend that you put some systems in place where not everybody can create vendors. If they're entering bills for you, then you could be the one to create the vendor, and then they can go ahead and post. But what I find, when too many persons are entering vendors in the system, it creates duplication in the system, because one person may type a particular way, then use shorthand, versus another one is more complete, they write the complete name. And if you use shorthand and you write the complete name, QuickBooks not going to really know if it's the same information you're entering because it's different. Somebody may spell out the word limited and another person may say LTD, right? And so it's best to have one person who is responsible to enter the vendors in the system. So that way it avoids duplication. Same is true for customers. Even if you have multiple persons generating invoices or posting expenses, you should best to have one, or even if it is two, but whosoever is assigned to creating these profiles, they must be on the same accord. Everybody must know how to do it properly in order to avoid any form of duplication. So when we want to enter or to create a new vendor account, you can use the navigation bar or use a new menu. You can click expense, new vendor, or if it's in the navigation bar, you'll see it under the section that says add vendor, right? And once you click on that, you just follow the same instructions with the name and everything. Same is true if it is that you have a vendor that you transact with multiple currencies, you will need to set up two profiles, one for JMD, one for the currency that the other foreign currency that you transact business with them. So money out workflow. So QuickBooks should be accurate as best as possible, right? And so there are two ways in which to record your transaction as it relates to money going out of the company. You can record it by way of an expense or by way of a bill where it is tracked through accounts payable, right? And we're going to look at each option briefly. So accounts payable, it pretty much tracks the bills that you are paying to a vendor, right? And it allows you to know how much you owe for a particular bill and what is overdue. Whereas expenses are also recorded in the current period, you will also be warned if you are entering any duplicated bills. Not all money out transactions require you to use accounts payable. If you pay something right away or you paid it in the past, you don't need to use accounts payable. You just use the expense function. And I briefly touched on this earlier in the session, where if you are posting a utility bill, it will be posted as a bill, right? You will use bill function and you will set up the date as well as when it is due. And so that is being tracked in accounts payable. If you go to PriceSmart and you buy something right now, it's not a bill, it's an expense. So you post it expense and you'll need to know the account from which the payment was made. So the bill functionality, there are some advantages in doing that, is that the company setting, it wants to, if there are duplicated bills, and it shows you how to get it. And I showed you that earlier in the session, how to get to setting up the duplicated bill. So it, by posting it as a bill, it really helps you to avoid duplicated transactions. This is just to show you what it looks like. So you will just need to turn on this functionality to say warn if duplicated bill number is used. Another advantage is that there are greater control over expenses and the financial statement. By using the bill, it allows you to realize expenses on the day of the bill and not the day of the bill payment. I also referred to that earlier, whereby, let's go back to the utility bill. The invoice date is separate from the date that they tell you that the bill is due. The invoice date is a date that the obligation is a date when you are obligated to pay this entity for the money you are now due. You owe them this money as at this date, but it's not the date when you make payment to them. So the bill functionality allows you to separate the actual date when the obligation starts and the date when you actually make payment, right? Versus when you're posting an expense. If you post a bill as an expense, you will have to post it based on the payment date and not the invoice date. So it also allows you to keep track of who you owe and bill due dates. So that's good, because if you enter 10 bills in the system, have multiple different due dates, then you are able to generate a report to see all the bills that you have pending and when you are expected to make payment for these bills. So by utilizing the bill options, you are better able to generate reports to guide you as to, okay, what bills should I pay this week? What bills should I pay next week? And so on. And this is just a way how to record the bill. You can use a new option, the new menu, or you can use your navigation menu by clicking on the expense. Then once you click new transaction, you select the bill option. And bill option looks like this, similar to when you're posting a regular expense, except there's no payment account date. You're just putting in the bill date and the due date, as well as the bill number, which would have been the number stated on the document that the supplier give to you, their reference number, the invoice reference number that goes here. I highly recommend to always enter your reference number. This is one of the ways to help you to know if there are any duplicated transaction or if this was entered before. If there's no reference number here, the system not going to know if this transaction was entered before, and so it wouldn't be able to warn you. So it's best to always, once the document has a number, you enter it. In the event where the document does not have a reference number, you can determine how you want to record that. Some persons use the date, some persons use the first initial and the last name and the date together. You can just determine a way, but it's best to always have a reference number so that it is easily identifiable. So when you are keeping a track of your transactions by way of no accounts payable, that simply means that you're recording it as an expense or as a check, right? And so in that option, you would go click on the create menu, and the global create menu is pretty much the new sign, the new menu, or you go back to the expense option on your navigation bar, and you can click on the expense, and then it brings you over to the main view, and you click new transaction. If you click new transaction, it asks you, is it bill or check or expense, and you select either the check or the expense. If it is that you're doing a check, remember I was sharing with you earlier that we don't really printing checks, but we're just recording that we have written a check, and you want to ensure that it is reflected in the system. So once you select check, you will see the form comes up. Let me show you the form that's fine. So once you click check, you enter who you're making payment from, which account the check is being drawn on, and the payment date. Usually the form automatically puts the date that you are creating the check. So it would have put today's date if you open the form today. And the check number that you put should be the check number that is on the physical check. And when you generate this, you're actually posting an accounting entry in the system. So you will need to know what type of expense the check is. So if you bought some stationaries from PriceSmart, then you would put the expense category account would be office and stationery. That's if that's what you call it in your chart of account. You put office and stationery, and then you put a brief description of what the stationaries are. No, I do not like to see whereby if the account is called office and stationery, then in the description you're going to put office and stationery. That does not help. anybody who is going to review your account. It does not help your accountant. It does not help the person who is preparing your taxes. You will need to put proper description. So if it's a case where you bought pens, you bought a stapling machine, you will need to state that. State what you bought. If you bought 100 things, the 100 things not going to hold, but you'll give a summary of what you bought. Just to give the person an idea of what type of expenses are included or what you bought from this person, what you're paying for, right? And you put the amount. So if you are not registered for GCT, however, on the invoice that you receive from PriceSmart is registered for GCT, so you will see GCT on your document. When you are posting your expense, because you are not registered for GCT, you are not required to break out the GCT when you are posting. All you are going to do is to put the total that they charge you. So whatever they charge you, so if they charge you 100,000, then they charge your GCT as 15%, and then you have the total. What you're going to put when you are posting is just the total figure. You don't break out the GCT because you are not required to outline or to break out the GCT on your posting. You would only be required to do that if you are also registered for GCT, right? So what you will only be required to do is to put the total that is noted on the document. Just the total. And for the tax status, you'll put outside of the scope. Outside of the scope of tax. So you'll put that, so you will not be required to track anything. So you'll see an option to indicate, is this inclusive of tax? Is this exclusive of tax? Or is it out of scope? You're going to put out of scope because you are not required to do that. And you are also able to record as an expense. And I pretty much showed you that option already, but as an expense, when you post a transaction as an expense, you must know the account that you're paying from. Must. So you have to select which of the account that you are paying from. Is that checking or your bank account, your MasterCard, or is it cash? You will need to select the account. Whatever you save the names as in your system, you will need to select which of the accounts that you're paying from. So these are just some examples that were in the system that I copied from. And also, if it is that you want to bill the expense to your client, you click in the box so that it can be ticked and you indicate the customer. You indicate the customer that you want this expense to be charged back to, as well as the tag function. If you want to keep a track of it, you can insert a tag. We're moving on to the reporting section. So for reporting purposes, if you were using Excel, you wouldn't be able to generate certain reports unless you set up Excel to link with your individual invoices that you'd have been generating in Excel. So utilize an accounting system. It helps you to generate reports for decision making, and it is critical for you to have that as a business because you need reports help you know where you are and what you can do to move forward. So there are certain reports that are pre-set in QuickBooks that you can use. You can do your custom reports, and then there are management reports that QuickBooks set up for you that you can also customize. You can utilize the search menu to find a particular report so that you can use it. Right, so when you want to look at your reports, you can go to the report section on the navigation bar. And once you click on that, which is here, your navigation bar, you click on your report. Then these are some reports that are there. You can set the parameters as to if you want to see it. So once you click on it, you are able to customize it by selecting the dates or the periods you want to view. And once you select that, you're able to see the info. Yes, you can generate a profit and loss account for a month, or you can do one for a year. I'm going to go to the test environment and show you the reports in a minute. Just let me finish this slide and then we hop on over to the test drive to show you some of the reports in. So the final tips and takeaway is that because you are new to the system, I recommend that you go into QuickBooks and practice regularly. Practice, but no, try to cover like some of the areas that we looked at today. Just go in, try to generate your invoices, try to generate your expenses, or you can use a test environment that I shared with you instead of using your account to practice, so to speak. Use a test environment, because if anything enters incorrectly, it's not going to break the system. But if you enter something incorrectly in your system is going to become messy. So to practice, use your test environment, which is a link I shared in the chat. You can use that to practice to see how things look. I would recommend you to set a reminder to work into your books either weekly or monthly. I don't like when at the end of the year, that's when persons are rushing to put information into the system, putting their expenses into the system. So develop a schedule whereby, okay, yes, you would have been generating your invoices in the system, but as it relates to expenses, sometimes people just don't enter that as they come in. But I would recommend you to either do it weekly or monthly or even quarterly, but don't wait until the end of the year in order to update your records. And I recommend you to keep learning. You know, QuickBooks is continuously updating with new features, and so you can stay updated by from time to time. QuickBooks will send out notifications about trainings and such, so you can utilize that. Or even from time to time, I have training sessions, or I send out email notifications about things of QuickBooks or of accounting that will be useful for you as a small business owner. It's good to network with other persons, especially other small business entities, so that especially if they use the same accounting system as you, so that whatever your issues are, if you share with them, and if they have a solution, they can share with you, especially if it worked for them in the past, they will be able to share that with you. And even if you have found out something interesting about the system, you can share it, and it helps along the way. And that is one of the reasons too why I also created the Facebook group, to help cultivate this type of networking. And I do hope that you would have joined the group so that you can get insight from time to time. I will be sharing information in that group. You can ask your questions, and I will be sharing or providing general responses in the group. Bear in mind that if you want specific help and guidance, that will have to be taken outside of the group, and it will be an engagement with my company. Accuracy is key. So you should ensure that the information that you're entering in QuickBooks is accurate, so that when the financial statements are generated, it would be a true representation of what happened throughout the year. So you have to ensure that whatever information you enter, it is what is on the document that you would have received from your supplier, or it would have been on the invoices that you would have generated to your customer, as well as whatever information is shown on your bank statement. And lastly is to secure your data. Ensure that you turn on you have a strong password, and if it allows you to set up a two-factor authentication to your QuickBooks account. We don't want anybody to gain access to our account for them to be sending fictitious invoices to your customer. I've never heard of it happening, but in this day and age where the cyber crime is increasing, we just need to secure information so that we don't become victims of that. All right, so thank you for participating in the training, and I hope it was beneficial to you. Hope you have learned a lot, and you are able to utilize it in your company. You can follow us on Instagram or on Facebook, or follow us on YouTube.